Well, hello and welcome back, all my Flower Power cruisers and other Stardust Alive cruisers. Your cruise host, Jason, here with another edition of All Access Pass from Home. I am again back in my home right here in Portland, Oregon, and I'm very fortunate to have with me a special guest today. He was one of the original Buckinghams, his guitarist and background vocal back in the good old days. And now, of course, you know him as lead vocalist and lead guitarist, Mr. Carl Giammarese. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing good. How are you?
Excellent, sir. Are you kidding? Thanks for taking the time to be here. I'll ask the obvious question first and foremost. How you feeling? How's everything? You're in Chicago, right?
Yeah, I'm in the Chicago area and just outside, just west of the city. And so far, so good. We're doing great. Trying to do everything you're supposed to do and kind of shut in. And as I mentioned to you earlier, I've been trying to do a few little videos, keep in touch with our fans and whatever.
And those are great videos.
Always reminding them to wash their hands.
Yeah, right. Please, at all times, wash your hands. For all the folks that are watching, sorry, go ahead.
But I said we're good. We're good so far.
Oh, wonderful. For anybody watching right now that doesn't know where to find those videos you're putting out or more content from you, where can they find that?
Well, of course, they always wind up on our Facebook page.
Okay.
Buckingham's Facebook page, and I've got my own page too, Carl Giammarese. You could do that, and on YouTube,
Okay.
Our publicist Dawn Lee Wakefield has been putting them up for me and creating these blogger, so you can always find it on YouTube.
Great.
Also. Besides, like I said, it's on our Facebook page.
Okay. So. Great. So for anyone out there that's watching that wants a little more content, Carl's putting a lot of stuff out right now. You're doing some songs, you're doing some chats, you're doing some stuff, and you're doing your best to keep all of your fans and music fans in general entertained and with some content, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing it for them, but I'm also doing it for me. I'll be honest.
Sure.
It's my own. I love playing. I love connecting with everybody, and it's an opportunity. At first I was concerned because it's me putting up my little iPhone and just playing into it. So the quality is not the best. But then again, I was looking at other people doing it. I saw a video of Paul Simon doing Sliding Away, and it sounded like he just put his cell phone up there and just started away. So, I do the same thing.
And I think this is something that as a major recording artists, in general can probably understand, and you specifically, I'm sure in this moment, considering what you just said, it's a different way to be in touch with the people that you love, right? I mean, there's folks that grew up on the Buckinghams, there's folks that love the Buckinghams music. They don't care if it's a 1080 high res, perfectly shot and recorded. I mean, sure, that's great, but to get a moment where knowing that you yourself set your cell phone on a stand and just recorded something because you felt like it, there's something personal, there's something intimate about that I think resonates with people.
Well, me, I'm always trying to be the perfectionist, and you want everything to sound great.
Sure.
And I had to be talked into. My publicist said, "No, don't they're going to love it. Just throw it out there. It sounds rough. They like that. It's just being real and being honest with them." And the fans convinced me that's because the comments I get from them, it just makes me feel so good to just, hear their input and their comments, and it inspires you and it makes you feel like doing it. Oh, I'm going to do this again.
Yeah.
Let me try this one. And they seem to love it, and it makes me feel good, and I'm hoping that it makes them feel good, and so.
It's really become interesting because this whole situation we're in has really it's changed communication. I think, we have so many people are video chatting now more than they ever did before because of obviously the contact rules and social distancing, and so many artists that, forgive me, that were not doing digital content before, artists from the, forgive the term, the older generations that weren't necessarily big YouTube sensations and weren't doing the Instagrams and Facebooks and TikTok and all the, you know, things that these kids today are into. It's opening up a portal where, you know, the original artists like yourself and all the other folks from the 60s and, you know, before and after are now kind of getting into that. And it's neat to see. It's really cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, it has changed so much. I mean, obviously, I mean, I go back to, you know, Buckinghams began in Chicago in 1965, so that's a long time ago, and it was very different, you know. And I always joke, you know, sometimes we'll be doing a show, and you look out in the audience, and there are, you know, a few younger people out there, you know, and I'll make some joke about or talk about, you know, when we did this 45, you know. And they look at me like, what the heck's a 45?
What the hell's a 45? Yeah.
I have to explain, well, it's got this thing that's got a big hole in the middle, and you know, and then you put a record, you know, you put the needle on the
You
record.
got the adapter, yeah.
Adapter, you know, and they don't. When I say 45, I'm talking about a gun or something. Or
yeah.
what does that mean? But yeah, I mean, it has changed so much, and we're starting to catch up. And you know, I see our fan base too is more educated, and
Yeah.
you know, I mean, I remember when we first, you know, when there was, you know, the you know, computers and social media based things, and at first they were not there, but now they are. You know,
Yeah.
they follow everything, and you know, we put music up all the time, and you know,
Well, it's, I mean, it's a blessing and a curse, I think, in some ways. You know, I think the 24-hour news cycle and, you know, some of the things that we can fall victim to, social media feeds into some things that maybe aren't great. But on the other end of that, the positive end, you know, having to sit around and wait for your next Buckingham's album to drop, you know, which people did, you know, however often you cut an album, versus now Carl can just jump on, or, you know, somebody can jump on and just drop a song just because they feel like it.
It's a lot more instantaneous, you know.
Yeah.
Connect right away with people, and we you know, it's kind of like for us, it's like having hit records all over again too.
Sure.
You know, with all the different mediums from iTunes to whatever, you know, Spotify and all your, you know,
Yeah.
music's out there and available, and so, you know, and you know, we still get, you know, royalties on that stuff. You know, I mean, our old label was Columbia Records, which is Sony now, and you know, we're still luckily getting paid. You know?
Hey, nothing wrong with that. Is this something you would see you guys continue to do even after we're kind of back to normal? Could you see yourself still continuing down the path of, you know, social media involvement like this?
Yeah, I mean, this kind of opened the door for me. I mean, it introduced me to the possibilities that you can do, and you know, I might start to get a little more elaborate with this.
Your setup.
Setup. I was talking to a friend. I said, "What's like a really good camera I can get with some microphones in it? You know, and I can just do, you know, just to raise the you know, not get crazy, but just raise
just elevate your product a little bit.
You know, I think this might open the door for a lot of artists now.
Yeah.
To connect more with the fans, and I, you know, I love it. I like doing this.
No, that's very cool.
I got to tell you, this show we did, just it was March 6th, the Unplugged show we did. It was just three of us. It was Nick Fortuna, myself, and our guitar player Dave Zane. And I was really anxious about doing that show and entered it, because we're an 8-piece horn band.
Yeah.
Normally. That's what we do.
Yeah.
So do something like this and sit down on stools, and the audience just was so open to it, and so giving and so responsive. I mean, it was like, you know, we were able to joke. It just had a looser feel to it. We were able to tell stories and joke a little bit, and you know, I found out something that we could do this occasionally, and continue doing that. And the audience just loves that connection, you know.
Was there another artist on the bill with you guys, or was it just you?
The group America.
Yeah.
Yeah, America.
Jerry and Dewey are great, and you know, that's the acoustic unplugged feel is something that they kind of have always embodied with their style of music, you know, so it fits in. And
yeah, well, let me tell you something. Those guys, well, Dewey and Jerry,
yeah,
nicest people. The band, the whole band, such
Sweethearts.
Nice people. That I never, you know, we were really on their show They were the headliners on that show. And I haven't had this experience where we were in our dressing rooms and just before we were going on, and they came up to the dressing room just to say hello and shake hands, and such down-to-earth friendly guys. I mean, it just kind of blew me away how great they were. And they commented about us in their show, and then they asked me to come on to perform their encore, which was Horse with No Name.
Horse with No Name.
Because I was a big fan of theirs in the early 70s, you know, when I was doing more of a, you know, there was that period when the Buckinghams split up, and, you know, right at the end of, you know, 1970, actually, and then we didn't get back together until 80. So I was part of a duo at that time. And we were out in LA and doing the singer-songwriter thing, and, you know, and groups like I had mentioned before, you know, America for one, with Crosby, Stills and Nash, Carole King, Joni Mitchell, James Taylor. You know, that was our.
Is this when you were working with Lou Adler?
Yes. Yeah. It was me and Dennis Tufano had a duo, Tufano and Giammarese, and we did 3 albums with Lou Adler's label Ode, and Lou produced the first album. And as I mentioned before, you know, it was a thrill for us, a great opportunity, because Lou was such a great producer. You know.
Yeah, it's a monster name.
Oh yeah, produced some Papas, so many different people, and of course Carole King. Tapestry album. That, you know, so that was
Tapestry won Grammy. He won Album of the Year for Tapestry with Carole King, didn't you?
Yeah. I remember I walked into his office right after he signed us, and it was real casual. Things were just kind of thrown around, and there in a corner was about 6 or 7 Grammy awards, just in the corner, you know, just laying there. And those Grammys were for Tapestry, you know, for different categories, you know. So, but he was such a nice guy, a down-to-earth guy, treated us really good. So,
well, yeah. That's fantastic that you got. I mean this politely as I say it. I think it's wonderful as groups that started and really had their heyday in the 60s and you know 70s eras find new ways to reinvent. And that's not the right word. I don't mean any disrespect by that, but new ways to appease their fans and new ways to play their music. Like you're talking about sitting down and doing it on stools, doing it on social media. You know, it gives the Buckinghams a chance to, and you don't need to reinvent because you're legendary, but it's nice to kind of change the wrapping a little bit on the box, if you will, and reach a new set of fans.
Well, you know, it kind of snuck up on us back in 1980. You know, I mean, here, you know, the 70s went by and it was nobody wanted to hear 60s. You know, it wasn't. And then all of a sudden, 1980 hits and everything becomes 60s again. And we were getting all these offers to come out and play again and do, you know. And I think it was really driven by our fan base, because you think about it, their age at that time was probably 30-ish, you know, early 30s, whatever, 30. And they wanted to hear their music again, the music that they grew up on, that they, you know, back when they were in their young teens and whatever. And all of a sudden, you know, and they had the income now to come out and see shows. Expendable income, you know, and so we just it just snowballed. We kept getting more offers to play, and so that's what we did, you know, and you know, we wound by 1985 we wound up on the Happy Together tour, first Happy Together tour, and it was I remember it was Gary Lewis and the Playboys was on that tour with us, and the Grassroots, and of course the Turtles. It was their tour. And gosh, we were out for I think almost 7 months on that tour, you know, and that really kicked it off. That really got us out there again playing, and it's been great ever since.
Well, and for people that, you know, obviously, if our Flower Power fans, excuse me, our Flower Power fans are watching, they know all about you. Some of our other cruises, though, tune in and do watch these interviews. So if you don't mind, before we go too far into, I recognize that some people may not be familiar with how the Buckinghams started. They may not be familiar with those mid 60s when you guys became a group. So if you don't mind, let's talk a little bit about the early days, like the Centuries and the Pulsations, and how the
really know your history here,
and how the
you know. Well, all right. Well, first I want to say that you know, we've played different cruises through the years, and Flower Power is the one we look for, and we look so
That's
forward
great.
to. You know, and it's the enthusiasm of the fans. And, you know, I don't know, it just has a different feel to it. You know, everybody's so enthusiastic and excited. And of course, you guys, you know, you do a great job with the entertainment, and everything is so professionally set up. And I don't mean to sound like I'm just, you know, giving you.
No, I understand.
Truth is, it is really well done, and I don't mind you know, the fans come up to you and they want to talk, and you know, we enjoy it. But anyway, that's
well, before you do, really quickly, just one thing about it. It's interesting because we do 8 different genres, you know, 8 different cruises, give or take, and different genres based on the year. Some cruises are music cruises, meaning it's not so much about the era and the other people and the experience, it's about the music. They want the music. Other cruises are about original artists. They would rather have an original artist who doesn't sound quite flawless anymore, but that is still better than hearing the music the way that they exactly remember it. And some cruises, and Flower Power is about the whole experience. You know, the people that, and our executive producer, Alan Rubens, talks about it a lot. People that grew up in the Flower Power era, they came from something. They survived something. They lived through it together. Right. And so there's an ownership of that era. There's an ownership of that feeling. There's an ownership of those names, Flower Power and things like that. It represents something more than just an era of music. It represents a true global, a global change. You know, well, people made it, you know.
Yeah. And a real time of change. It's what the music, I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if the music was driven by it was of what was going on at the time. And sometimes the music had that influence on, you know, it all kind of went together, you know. I mean, it was a really, those late 60s, a real time of unrest with the Vietnam War. You know, there was just so much going on in the country. But yeah, I mean, you know, younger people ask me a lot of times, what was it like in the 60s? You know, and it's a feeling, and it's not always easy to explain. You know, what, you know, all the racial things that were going on.
Sure.
But anyway, you asked me.
The centuries, the pulsations, the start of the Buckinghams.
You know, I got to tell you, it was a great time to be in the business. And this is what I'm talking about, around 1964, 65. You know, I mean, when the Beatles hit the skin, we all wanted to be the fifth Beatle. The Beatles changed my life. You know, because of them, I can honestly say the direction I took was because of that. You know, I was having fun playing with a band, the Centuries, as you mentioned first, and we were doing a lot of, you know, cover songs like everybody else, with the, you know, songs like doing Venture songs, Walk Don't Run, you know, Pipeline. You know, that was, you know, we were having fun with it, and then all of a sudden, you know, in '64, when the Beatles hit our shores, and that changed everything for me. And you know, I was a senior in high school.
And this is in Chicago.
This is in Chicago. I went to a school, high school, Lane Tech, and I have to honestly say I was a really good student until the Beatles came. Everything by my senior year, because what happened was, you know, at that point, I'm getting ahead of myself, but we were the Buckinghams, and Kind of a Drag came out and took off like crazy. And here I am, the senior.
That really puts you on the scene. I mean,
I mean, that was it. We had, you know, we were lucky. What got us started? Okay, we'll go back to the Centuries. We were playing. There were dances around Chicago, all these different dance venues. So most of the musicians, we all knew each other.
Sure.
You know, we were friendly and played different. You know, there was the Holiday Ballroom, the Embassy Ballroom. There was a bunch of teen clubs. There were all these different things. So the Centuries broke up for various reasons, and these other guys asked me to join them, a group called the Pulsations, and they were playing in some of the dance places around the city. So I became the lead guitar player and one of the singers in that group, and we played out for a few months, and eventually I dragged Nick Fortuna over he was with me in the Centuries, you know, Nick. because that group, the Centuries,
Yeah.
started by my cousin, Jerry Alardi, great drummer, great singer, wonderful singer, very talented guy. But, you felt that I just had this feeling that these guys in the Century, in the Pulsations were going somewhere. They had a sound.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Can I ask you what gave you that feeling? Like when you said they had a sound, what was it that
you know what it was? There were two, when the group started, the Pulsations, there were two lead singers out in front, and then the band. And the lead singers, there was a guy who was singing a lot of the lead. His name was George LeGros. And George is no longer with us. He passed away several years ago, but
sorry.
he was a singer, and Dennis Tufano. So they had a certain sound. I remember I was standing in back trying to get into the theater one night to set up. This was before I had joined them, and I could hear through the door these two guys singing. And, I thought it was the Righteous Brothers. They were, or the Everly Brothers. They just had that really nice vocal sound, and they were two really good looking guys. And so I was inspired to join them. And soon after that, we got an opportunity to audition for a TV show at WGN Television. It was a variety show called All Time Hits. And, short-lived variety show, but we were the token rock band. We would pick a few songs to play on the show every week, and that's what we would do, and it was great because if anyone's familiar with WGN, it's a superstation, so it was syndicated, and you can hear it in different markets around the country, so the exposure was great. But just before we were getting ready to do it, the producers loved the band, but they didn't like our name. They didn't like Pulsations. So somebody from the show, we wanted to capitalize on the British invasion. And the security guard that we were friends with, his name was John O'Pager. John threw out a few names to us, and one of them was the Buckinghams. And we thought, wow, that sounds cool. We couldn't believe nobody was using that yet, So we started doing, it was a 13-week show. So we got a lot of exposure from that as the Buckinghams.
And there's connection to Chicago, right? Don't you guys have a fountain?
We have a fountain. A lot of people think that's why we picked the name Buckinghams, because we have this big, beautiful fountain that lights up beautifully every summer. In the springtime, they light it up, and it's right in Grant Park, right downtown by the lake.
Yeah, I've seen it. It's beautiful.
And it's great. And the funny thing was that somebody got the idea when we did our first album. We got a record deal with a local record label, USA Records, and they kept telling us, and we're a cover band, so the songs we did, and we recorded at the Old Chess Studios in Chicago.
Yeah, very cool.
A lot of great blues artists were recording there at the time, like Chuck Berry and Muddy Waters.
Yeah.
And,
Chess Records. You're walking down absolute royalty at that point.
Yeah. But we were just these pop guys that were, interested. So we went in and recorded a whole collection of our cover tunes, and so they wanted to put out an album, and they said, well, you got to come up with an album cover, We were kind of dragging our feet. And they were like, well, if you don't come up with something, we're just going to put a black cover out there and with your name on it, and that's it. So a friend of ours had one of the first Polaroid cameras. So he said, we'll go down to the lake and let's do it.
The quality will be brilliant. I can tell you now, the quality. Yeah.
And so we stood in front of the fountain and he took the picture. And by the time they blew it up to album size, you can't tell what that was back there. It's a bunch of lights,
I've seen the cover. Actually, I know the cover exactly. It looks like flashes kind of on one side, like a bunch of little sparkles. Yeah.
It actually
very cool.
To be kind of cool. So that wound up being the cover. And then, we got that song, Kind of a Drag, from a good friend of ours, our manager, Carl Bonifetti, got us the song from Jim Holvey, who was a songwriter, and gave us the tune, and we went in the studio, and the rest is history.
And you guys charted, is that 67?
It actually hit number one in February of 67.
67. Because you guys charted 4 or 5 hits that year. You guys charted a bunch of hits that year.
Yeah, one of them, because Kind of a Drag was released in 66, but then it was number one in February of '67, and then Susan.
Yeah.
Susan was '68 actually, beginning of '68. But '67 was the big year. Yeah.
And actually, before you go too far, Arlene Nissen Lassen says, Carl, was there a real Susan that the song was written for?
Actually, yeah, there was.
Oh.
And I mentioned Jim Holvey, who wrote the song. Well, he had a girlfriend, Susan, who was a Playboy bunny. Anyway, he was in love with her, and
Shocking.
He wrote the song about her. You know, she was, and actually, I mean, if you listen to the lyrics to that song and "Don't You Care" and well, obviously Susan, but it's kind of telling the same story. A lot of, you know, it's
Yeah.
he lost the girl, you know, and things didn't work out so well, you know. So
and actually, I was just going to say, Deborah has a perfect follow-up. She first and foremost says to Carl, first and foremost, thanks for the mini concert from your home to mine in Kernville. I love so many of your songs. Who wrote the majority of them? They have always spoken to me, from I Love You to Susan to Don't You Care and all in between. Thank you for being the soundtrack of my love life.
Oh, well.
So Deborah wants to know, who wrote the majority of your songs? Was it?
Deborah, thank you very much. Thanks for being a fan of our music. I appreciate it, all your support. Love you back and hope to see you soon. Jim Holvey, actually Holvey and Gary Beisbeer, who wrote some of the lyrics, but Holvey was the main guy who wrote those songs. I still talk to him, in touch with him. He lives out in LA, but he wrote Kind of a Drag, Don't You Care, Hey Baby, They're Playing Our Song, and Susan. And the only song that was a big hit, it was actually our second biggest hit, was Mercy, Mercy, Mercy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of my favorites because it's so different from the others too, and it's got that soulful. And you know, that song originally was an instrumental. It was written by Joe Zawinul, who played with Cannonball Adderley. It was a jazz song. It was an instrumental. It was a jazz instrumental, and it was a pretty big hit a few months before we recorded it. But our manager and producer, Jim Curcio, came up with a version that was recorded by Johnny Guitar Watson. It was he turned it into an R&B song with the lyrics. And they had a minor hit with it on the R&B charts. It never got too high up, but he suggested it and brought us the song, and we pretty much copied their arrangement the same way. But you know, we were a pop group. We were, you know, very popular at the time. We just came off of a #1 record with Kind of a Drag, and then Don't You Care was a big hit for us. So when Mercy was originally just meant to be a part of our album, of the Time and Charges album. But when Columbia heard it, when the A&R people heard it, they said, hey, that's got to be the next single. And it went up the charts, and it got to #5 nationally, you know. So that was exciting, because I love the feel of that song. It had a certain looseness to it, and I thought the vocals really were right on, and the whole feel of the song. There's a great piano track in there that was just, you know, exceptional. So, you know, that happened, and we were very lucky, you know. So that was the only one of the hits that we didn't write. I mean, that wasn't written by Holvey.
Got it.
So
what's it like as an individual, or speaking for the band, what's it like all of a sudden? I mean, if you guys kind of came together, you said in 65-ish, 66-ish there, is that, or 65, right?
65. Yeah,
65. And so 66 you start to release, and 67 you have a monster year. That's pretty quick success for a band. You know, it's not the typical 15 years toiling away, 5 years toiling away. I mean, you guys hit right away. What's that like, all of a sudden exploding that quickly?
Well, it was a little scary, to be honest with you, but you know what made it easier? Because we went from being a local band, and we would play a little bit in the tri-state area. You know, we would veer out of Chicago and play in, you know, Michigan and Indiana and so forth, and maybe just over the border in Iowa and Wisconsin. So, you know, all of a sudden you got the #1 record in the country, and you're getting all these offers to play, and pretty soon
Sure.
TV shows came and whatever. But and it was a little frightening to be out there. But what made it easier really is we were a 5-piece band, so you had each other. I think about some of these solo artists that all of a sudden they're thrown into that kind of success, and they don't have their peers
Support group almost. Yeah.
And that made it a lot easier, and that was and it was a whirlwind craziness. I remember after Kind of a Drag, it was still #1, and we, it was a weird thing because that was the last song we were under contract to USA Records for. And we were looking for another manager. So all of a sudden we didn't have a booking agent, a manager, and a record company, and we have a record in the country, which is a good position to be in.
You're a free agent, yeah.
Oh yeah, you can get anybody then to come on board with you, and that's when I remember signing the contracts with Columbia Records on a plane on the way to New York to record "Don't You Care," and so it all happened really. It happened so fast. We played probably 300 dates that year in '67.
Wow, that's a lot of dates, man.
We were that's all we did. We would be on the road, and we'd come into New York to record another song, and then we'd just head right out again.
Yeah. Roughly how old are you at the time, if you don't mind me asking?
I was, I was about 18 when it really started taking off.
That's great. And sitting here now today in 2020, as you look back at 1965, you're talking 55 years ago,
Really?
Yeah, right. What type of emotion, what type of feeling do you get to still be relevant and to still be touring and to still be, and I don't mean that rudely when I say still be relevant. I mean, there's a lot of very talented musicians and artists that aren't still popular, that don't still have a following. What do you credit it to? What's your thoughts as you look at it?
Well, first of all, I never thought that I'd be at this point in my life and still doing it. I remember somebody interviewing me back in '67 asking me, well, how long do you think you guys will do this? And I remember saying, well, I hope a few years, and for a while, and here we are all those years later. I attribute it to, first of all, great music, not only the Buckingham songs, but about the different artists that, from our genre, that the songs, so just substance to them, the great songs. And then, of course, I've got to give most of the credit to the fan base, the fans. They're still listening. They still want to hear their music.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't still be out here doing this.
Trust me, we run a cruise based on it. We understand intimately.
Better than anybody, and it's because they still support it so much. And I mean, I'm not trying to be mushy here, but we are so grateful that the fans still want to come out and hear these songs. And people ask me a lot of times, how the heck could you play Kind of a Drag every night? And if I was just playing it to myself, it would be difficult. But when you get the reaction that we get from the fans, and they start singing along, and I'll pull the mic away and
they'll finish the lyric
to them to sing, and they sing they know the words and the lyrics, and that's what renews it. That's the constant renewal of it, is that you're meeting new people all the time, and they're excited about it, and they want to hear those songs, and the reaction you get and the applause and feeds my ego,
Sure. Well, and rightfully so. I mean, and deservedly so. And on that same token, what's it like going back out on theme-based cruises and or the tours? I mean, the Happy Together tour did more than just the first version. There was obviously 2010. I think you guys were back out, with all the guys and gals, and you had a bunch of different tours in there. You had the Solid Gold '60s tour, and then there's the cruises and things like that. Is it just Old Home Week, getting all the artists together that you guys remember and played with and knew so well?
Yeah, because we all have memories and different stories, and we used to talk more about girls. Now we talk about our aches and pains more. But, But no, it's always, it's a thrill to see. You know, we've been on the Happy Together tour. Well, the first one was in '85. That was a different situation. But since 2010, we've been on it probably 5 times. You know,
Yeah.
at least 5 times. And we were on it last year. And I got to tell you, for this 7-year-old guy to go out and play in 3 months and do 55 shows, you know, it's a lot of touring, a lot of dates. But there you go. I mean, this tour, it's become a brand. It's just like Flower Power, you know.
Yeah.
It's people know it, you know, and it's
Yeah.
become that brand, and that they know what they're going to see and what's there, and they want to see that and they want to feel that and be a part of it. And you know, we're doing, Nick Fortuna and I are doing maybe I think about 7 or 8 Happy Together tour shows this year, God willing that everything works out here. We've got, we don't have another date, Buckingham show till about June 12th, hopefully that will work out. And then we've got dates in June and July, and you know, we're working every other day in August if that everything works out, you know, plan. But you know, so we'll be doing some Happy Together, and you know, it's just the years they go by. We've played for 2 inaugurations. You know, we've played for George Bush's inauguration and for Obama, and that was an experience. You know,
I can imagine.
You know, experience that, and so it's been. I'm blessed. You know, what can I say?
Yeah.
It's been a thrill. It's been a real gift to us to be able to do this all these years. You know.
And as a man with all the experience you have and all the touring you've done and all the times you've played the songs, and now you understand your fans probably better than you ever did before. What advice would you give to 18-year-old you when that reporter asks you, how long do you think you guys want to do this? And you go, yeah, a year or 2. Any advice you'd give to that kid nowadays?
Become a lawyer or a doctor.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
No, yeah, my advice: if you really want to be an art, you know, music, an artist, a performer, a recording artist, whatever. Almost like anything else, you've got to have such dedication and focus, and it's gotten even harder. I mean, think about the competition there is today. You know, you have to be willing to sacrifice a lot. You know, this sounds like a standard answer, but it's the truth. You got to be focused. I mean, the talent's got to be there, obviously, sure. But you got to just stay on track and focus on it, and be able to be willing to sacrifice so much for your. I mean, when I think about all the things in my life I missed because of, you know, I've missed, you know, weddings and celebrations and, you know, New Year's with my wife, and you name it. You know, these are just things that, you know, you have to be willing to do. And it takes, you know, I was watching American Idol the other night, and these kids are so freaking talented. I mean, you know, they can sing, you know, and what's going to happen to them? Maybe 1 or 2 will emerge, you know, from the season. And then, you know, I think back 5 years ago, all the great singers, kids that I've seen on that show, where are they now?
Yeah.
You know, you don't hear about them anymore. So it's a crapshoot to, you know, you could have everything going for you, and you still don't know if you're going to make it. But if you love it, and you got to love it, you know, if you don't really love it, you're not gonna have a chance.
I was talking to Peter Noon, and he actually was saying that similar to what you're saying. You know, we were talking about artists in general, and he was saying, you know, he knew some monsters back in the day that just never became anything. Excuse me. Pardon me. They just never became anything because luck wasn't on their side, or the right place, the right time, or the right manager, right producer, right song came across his desk or her desk. And, you know, and he attributed, you know, a lot of his success. He was saying, you know, obviously the talent has to be there, but it's right place, right time, you know, for a lot of it. And there's some fortune.
The right place, right time. Timing is everything. And I've been asked that before. I said, how come somebody really talented, didn't make it? And how come somebody who's not so talented becomes so successful?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I don't know if I'm in a position to judge that, whether someone's not talented enough or whatever. But who knows for sure? But I can tell you this: I've known a lot of really talented people, and I'm not going to name people, but who have ruined it for themselves,
Yeah.
and I thought had a tremendous amount of talent. I've known, that got just up on, became alcoholics or drug addicts or whatever,
Sure.
or abusers in some way, or didn't stay focused
Yeah.
on what they were doing. There was a period of time when I was doing jingles, commercials.
Well, you did a lot of them, a lot of big ones.
A really big jingle town. I did, at McDonald's campaigns and United Airlines and some beer
Pizza Hut, and
commercials.
yeah, you did a lot of them.
There was, I looked at my old ledger book, and I did, back in 1977, I think it was, I must have sang on about 300 commercials, and they weren't all the big national ones. Some were more regional, but there were a lot of national ones too. And I remember one guy, I won't even say obviously who he is, but man, was he a great singer. And I turned some of the jingle producers onto him, and they loved it. They heard his voice on a recording, and they loved his voice. And I got him started on this, and he had a problem with alcohol, and he would disappear during the sessions and wind up in the men's room and come out smashed. See, this is what I'm talking about. I'm not saying everybody's like that, but
No.
there's many ways you could ruin it for yourself.
Sure.
And so a lot of people miss the boat because they had the talent, but they did something to screw it up.
I think that's true in most professions, right? You look at athletes, you look at, those that we regard as the greatest to ever do it. Maybe they are, but maybe they're just the greatest that we know about. Maybe there was a bigger, a better talent somewhere that just didn't catch a break or ruined it for themselves or just never made it, and it's not to take anything away from those that do and have, because they are the greats. You are the greats. But it is interesting when you look at.
I can sort of step back and look at myself, and I'm I don't really see myself as this exceptional or great talent or anything, but I think what I could put across is how much I love doing it, and it comes out, that you're enjoying yourself, and I think it's genuine. I still enjoy doing it so much, and meeting people and performing, and that comes across, and I know I can still perform at a certain level, and the voice is still there. I can sing, and I've always said through the years, I've said to my wife, I said, when it comes time for me to, hey, make sure you tell me that it's time. Let me give it up,
Don't let me go slowly. Like, tap me. Give me the tap. Yeah, let me know.
Time for you to,
babe.
and I've
time
seen
to hang them up.
That should say, hey, maybe it's time to stop.
We do a country cruise as well, and 3-4 years ago we had Kenny Rogers on, and God bless him. And Kenny Rogers doesn't sound like Kenny Rogers. At that time he didn't. And I will never forget this moment as long as I live. He walked out on stage and he sang a song, and it was a well-known song, and everybody was like, oh, but you knew he didn't quite have it anymore. And I mean, no disrespect, right? He just wasn't, and he knew it. And he at the end of the song, he actually said to everybody, he goes, hey, how many of you out there remember me singing this song back in 1972 or whatever it was? And everybody cheered and screamed. And he goes, do me a favor tonight. Remember me singing these songs back in, and everybody cheered. And for the rest of the concert, he had them right here. But it was exactly what you're saying. He knew he was on the downhill slide of his live performances, and he owned it, but it's to your point.
Yeah, well, I remember Kenny, right? Playing when he had a band before he was a country artist. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, I mean, I not there, but I know. I mean, my parents were big fans, and I was raised on all music, so I was,
Yeah, we used to do some shows with him back then, but yeah, well, there's a lot of artists there. People still want to just you know,
It's tough to give up.
just they listen with their eyes.
Yeah.
And it's just
Yeah.
being in the presence of this artist that they had so much respect for and love. It's enough. It's enough.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit here. At the end of each of these interviews, I tend to kind of ask the same question, and it's tough to ignore it. I know we've done our best to stay very positive, obviously, and we'll continue to do so, but we're living in an interesting climate at this exact moment. We've all, obviously we all watch probably too much of the news, and things are happening and going on. What's your thoughts? Do you have any feelings or anything you want to share with the Flower Power folks or the Star Vista fans?
Well, I mean, I'm no different than so many people now. We're scared. There's a certain, and I think it has to do with the fact that the unknown. That's always the scary thing, because we don't know. They still haven't reached the point where it's still going up. I mean, we've had things happen to us in the past. 9/11. There's been hurricanes. But these things come to an end. The tragedy happens, and then we rebuild. And we will do that with this. I mean, it will happen. But the point is, at this point, it's still going on.
You don't see the end yet.
Know what the end is going to be. How many people will die from this? How many people will be sick? And the only thing I could say is not only just, I get a little emotional when I talk about this stuff.
Thank you for your honesty.
But, we will come out on top. We will survive. This is the greatest country in the world, and humanity in general. Not only our world here in the United States, but the whole world will survive. We'll get past this, and we have to just do the things that we're supposed to do, that they ask us to do. We have to pay attention to what the scientists say, what the doctors say. That's what's most important. They know, they're at the forefront of this. They know what's going on. And we just have to all be vigilant and do what they tell us to do. If you're supposed to be shuttered in and stay home, we don't congregate. It really aggravated me when these kids you see them on the beaches.
Florida.
They just, I understand that they're young and they're invincible. But they have to realize that they could infect older people. But all I can say is that on a positive note, we're going to come out of this on top. We're going to survive. It's going to be, this could be, there hasn't been anything like this since that 1918 pandemic,
Spanish flu, right?
But God willing, we'll do this. We'll manage. We'll get. We just have to do everything we're supposed to do. And
well, I don't want to put you on the spot, but once we get these cruises back moving, which will be sooner rather than later, can we count on the Buckinghams to be back with us?
If you don't have us on it, I'm going to come after you and find you, Jason. I hope so. I got to say, we were really looking forward to this. My band, these guys have been, we've been talking for months about, but the Flower Power cruise is coming, and we were just thrilled to be a part of it. And who knows? Maybe this cruise will come back to us. I hope so. Maybe there's some way that, I wish you guys a lot of success and hope that it all comes together. I know this is really getting thrown a curveball here, but
it is, but to your point, and we talked about this a little bit off camera or off recording before we started, there's a spectrum in this of, those not doing enough, those doing too much. And then there's right down the middle, which to your point, listening to the doctors, you're staying healthy and safe. You're just doing what you're supposed to do, washing your hands, social distancing. And we know most of the people down the middle, and I mean no disrespect to either end. I mean no disrespect to the people not doing enough or the people doing too much. Everyone reacts their own way. And you have to do what you feel like you need to do. But with that said, there is a vast majority of people down the middle that, we're ready for the Flower Power cruise to come back. We're ready for the different, the different things we enjoy to reemerge. We can't wait to see the Buckinghams back on stage, and the this, the that. And as much as we love the social media and these interviews that we get, that you taking the time to be here with me and talk to our folks out there are wonderful. but they want to be in the room with you, you know, and they want to shake your hand and they want to say thank you. And
well, we do too. You know, we want to be out there. We want to be out there with our fans and with everybody and enjoying ourselves. And, you know, so it'll happen, you know,
it will
survive. We'll all get past it. And there'll be a lot of great sacrifice that's going to have to be. And unfortunately, we're going to lose people. And that's the hard part, you know.
It's the tough part, but we will get through. As you said, this too shall pass, as some wonderful individuals have said on this before. So I want to thank you very much for your honesty, first of all, and your emotion. I know that's not always easy to control or do, but I truly appreciate anyone that has the ability to be real, especially in a time like this, and to express how they feel. That takes great strength to do so. And I appreciate you and what you bring to this. So thank you very much, Carl.
Well, thank you for having me on. I really mean that sincerely. I love this business. I love meeting people, and I do get emotional because, you know, these are all human beings here. We're all together. We're all in this together, you know.
Amen, brother. Well, keep an eye on your inbox because we're going to be shooting you a contract the minute we know when these cruise dates are. So.
Okay. Well, real good, Jason. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Carl, thank you so much. Be well. And from us to you, we'll see you soon.
Yeah. And be well, be safe, do what you're supposed to do. Everybody out there, you know.
Amen.
Wash the hands.
Wash your hands, folks. Wash your hands. To all our friends and fans that are watching, thank you so much for tuning in for another edition of All Access Pass. I'm your host, Jason, and it is an honor to have with me the one and only of the Buckinghams, Mr. Carl Giammarese. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful day. See you around.